So here we are at the last hour of our time together, and I'm curious what each of you might feel we haven't touched on, or questions or experiences that you've had around this topic of contentment, or really anything else. I do want to make sure a couple of things myself, that of course when we talk about conventional reality, we're always talking about what's conditioned. Everything in this realm of samsara, all these many realms, any realms in samsara, it's all conditioned. And what we're talking about touching in on or observing from is the unconditioned. And instead of thinking that the unconditioned is something really elusive, far away, too high, or too pure, or too something for us to experience, we should remind ourselves and perhaps each other that it really is right here, accessible in the present moment. And when we really pause and observe our experience with wisdom, we're touching in on it. And when we see our experience of dukkha and discontent and craving, clinging, greed, hatred, delusion, then we recognize that we're observing it. We're able to see it from a position of not being engulfed by it, overwhelmed by it, overcome by it. And when we use the Noble Eightfold Path, when we practice meditation, we're able to help the mind relax, become relatively still. And our minds are different. Some minds want to think more than others. Some minds easily go silent. Either way, we can either use that thinking in an appropriate, effective way by investigating and allowing the answers to our questions arise out of the silence, even if the silence seems very momentary. You ask a question and we don't answer it by reasoning or logic or inference, but to really allow it to arise spontaneously. Questions like, why is this discontent present? Or what is it that I want to have be different than it is? Or is this really me? Is this who I am? And we have a lot of judgments about ourselves as well as others. And I want to really encourage some doubt around this idea of who we think we are, because this often is what makes us miserable. So, recognizing that the things that we do that we would like to change, or things that we wish were different, instead of being critical of ourselves, we can recognize that this just comes from conditioning. It's not a self. We don't have to it's inappropriate to feel bad about it, you might say, but then not to be upset that we're feeling bad about it, but just to be with that layer. This is what I'm experiencing now. It's okay, you know. And I don't know, I'd be interested in knowing what your experience is, but when my mind can go there, um, whether it's my own behavior, my own experience, or someone else's, if I can recognize that this unfolds because of conditioning, there's so much compassion that can rise for that understanding and patience. And I think in those moments, there's a certain level of contentment. It's like, oh, right. I acted like that because of all this conditioning from the past. Now I can see it and I can do something different. We have to be with the dukkha and recognize it and its cause, and then we can change the patterns. And it's so wonderful to really see how we've changed over the years of practice. And it's wonderful to see how other people are changing. You know, Ayya Chitananda and I have the great privilege of hearing stories that you tell us about things you're learning. And it's so inspiring. It's beautiful. So I just wanted to share those really 2 points about letting go of our criticism and really seeing the real reason why there are these challenges or things not going the way we want to, or ourselves not acting the way we'd like to. And also, you know, just really putting attention on some of the things that we can be encouraged by. We don't have to take this conditioned reality so seriously. It's all falling apart. It's okay. It's what it's designed to do. I don't know, is that a good way to put it? Designed? Probably not. It's just its nature. Any comments or questions, thoughts? Yes, James.
Something you just said really struck me as a very useful contemplation. As you said, "Who do I think I am?" Um, and I took it to be something that if I'm feeling upset, or feeling happy or whatever, like, who do I think I am to be happy? Who do I think I am to be upset? Or who do I think I am to have these feelings? And I'll try it out, let you know how it's going. But it seemed like something that could, really get back to what's the relevant thing to ponder in a particular moment. Um, so that I think we sort of touched on it, in the context of relative and super mundane reality. But this morning when we started, you said, what's your contentment level, and then what's your contentment level after we did the precepts, and I hadn't really, contemplated the whole scope of that at that point. But so, I had something like absurdly high at like my contentment was 7 out of 10, before we did the chanting, and um, and then definitely after the chanting, I felt better. Not the chanting, but the precepts. I felt better because I was more immersed in the Dhamma, and that's when you feel the best. And then I was thinking, um, well, if we're really talking about contentment, then the only time I'm really content is when I'm well, I would say I've never experienced full contentment.
Mhm.
Um, and but you know, my contentment grows more active uh, as I become more immersed in the Dhamma. And that's like the only way to really feel content. Uh, so, the mundane, level of contentment where, well, nothing's bothering me in particular right now. I mean, that's about a two, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so anyway, I don't know what to think about that, but those are my kind of reflections on the beginning and the end of the day.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's interesting when you said that about who am I to be happy. I saw this disturbed look on my friend's face here.
Sounded harsh.
Well, you could say, who's happy?
Yeah.
Who's happy and
Once you
why?
got going, I understood better.
Yeah.
But at first I was like, hey, that's mean. Very nice to my
Yeah.
friend James over there.
Your friend James is you like for him to be happy.
Yeah.
Happy in the Dhamma, it's like that's exactly it. Immersed in the Dhamma, we're content. Immersed in the Dhamma, we're happy. And immersed in
Yeah.
the Dhamma, we're relieved from suffering.
Yeah, we're
And
protected. Our
yeah,
minds are
we are
protected.
protected. That's right. And then, if we're wondering how to be immersed in the Dhamma, yeah, Four Noble Truths.
Yeah.
It really does work, and it's incredibly simple. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was another reflection I had that's a little bit a non sequitur. I can't remember if it was Joyce or Joni who mentioned contemplating the Four Noble Truths or uh, looking at them more deeply. And one of my meditation practices, if I can't get grounded or something, I'll pick up one of these major teachings of the Buddha, and the Four Noble Truth is a good one. Sometimes I use the five precepts. But to go through and really contemplate, how do I know this is true? What is this like? What does this really mean? Um, and why is it true? Or is it true? Uh, and that really deepens my practice and brings immediacy to the experience of the Dhamma. Uh, so anyway, that's just a little anecdote.
Yeah, it's good.
Very useful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Phil.
When James said, who do I think I am? I took it as who am I thinking I am? Like, who am I making up right now? And how optional that is and arbitrary.
Yeah.
Like, I could be really upset, I could be brooding, I could be really happy memory. Like, who I am right now is
It's so
It's
unstable.
made up,
It's so
yeah.
insubstantial. It's just constantly changing. Yeah. Yeah. This idea of trusting awareness, really taking that in and developing that stability. Yes.
And you said earlier, like to question who is aware. I think that's a step further because awareness, I think, is always there, the knowing mind.
Mhm.
But even that is not self.
It is not self.
there's no who I am.
Yeah.
No, can everyone hear it? Just seen?
Probably not.
It's very soft.
She's
Can you say that again?
Very
but
sweet,
louder?
soft voice.
Yeah. You think you can do it?
Yeah, so I was just wondering who is aware. So that's a step further from the five conducts, because awareness is beyond that. But even then, that awareness is not self.
Yep. Could you hear that?
Oh, good. Okay.
Good,
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, exactly. And of course we hear that all the time, Ajahn Ghana said it over and over again when we were in Thailand this last time. And, really take the Dhamma as the principle of your life rather than the sense of self. And, seeing that the sense of self is a fantasy. It's a conventional reality. Okay, yes, here we are. I'm sitting here. There's a conventional Ayya Santussikā, but there's no real core to it. There's no stable, abiding reality to it. It's constantly changing. And to recognize that that's not where we want to live from, even though there's all these things coming in through the senses that are scary or disturbing or exciting or attractive, and on and on and on, and all kinds of responsibilities and people to relate to and care for and listen to and learn from, and all of these things that are going on. It's still not reality in the ultimate sense, and there's no self in any of it. And then, as Justine was saying, there's no self in the knower, the knowing. And I know some people who listen to Ajahn Sumedho and think he's teaching eternalism, and it's totally not that. It's not like there's a self that continues who's the knower. It's only this reality of Dhamma. And it's, the beauty of it all is that it brings happiness to recognize that there's no self. It's like that idea of a self that we need to promote and protect and defend and care for and educate and all of those things is really such a burden. If we can take care of the body and direct the mind in wholesome ways without that burden of identity, we can do it with ease. We can do it with joy. We can do it with this universal love for all beings and this buoyancy. I remember Ajahn Sucitto one time talking about people who, well, it's kind of funny to say it that way, but from the outside, you can say people who have entered the stream or realized stream entry. And he talked about there's a kind of buoyancy, there's a lasting knowing that everything's impermanent. So it's interesting. It's such a wonderful thing that the Dhamma is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. And that we can develop our confidence, our faith in it, can develop our confidence in pure awareness. Joni?
Always doing that. So I was just reflecting on what James had brought up, or what the question of who is, and I was reflecting on following the 8 precepts, and the one that I had the most trouble with was the entertainment one. Mm-hmm. And the conditioned habit for me, the pattern for me, lifelong pattern for me, is the escaping into fiction. And so I was thinking that when I am witnessing that during the 8 precepts, and not just during the 8 precepts, because of course now it has stayed with me. Kind of doing it for that one day for the 8 precepts, it's like now in my mind of that it's just recognizing how it's not fulfilling, it's not contentment, it's not, it's silly, inane in a lot of ways. But I was thinking of the question that James raised about who is, and so I think one of my questions as I kind of go through this is going to be, who is trying to escape? See if that kind of just helps that perspective with that. But anyway.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, sometimes when I was working with this, it's many years ago now, it's like looking at all the different methods I had for escape. You know, feeling strong emotions that I didn't want to feel, call a friend, you know, engage in entertainment, you know, relive an old grudge, you know, or something, you know, like any kind of distraction, or you know, blaming someone else, you know, things should not be the way they are, kind of thing. You know, those are all kinds of escape. Going into thinking instead of feeling. It's an escape. Eating, sleeping, you know, can be ways of escaping.
But don't you think along on this path, it's work, and I mean, it's not like clench your fingers kind of work, usually, but so there has to be some escaping. I mean,
I do recommend it sometimes.
yes, and I mean like a considered, you know, taking a walk.
Oh yeah.
Without, you know, not walking meditation. Just, you know, like
a way to ease off.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about going full tilt 24/7.
Yeah.
But the escape I'm talking about is when there's dukkha, that, you know, like it's strong enough that we want to pull away from it and act like it's not there, or forget that it's there. And actually sometimes it's so strong it's wise to pull away for a little while, but knowing that you're doing it, knowing that I'm going to take a break here from, you know, being focused on this, and I'm going to, you know, relieve the mind, even if it's a innocent movie, you know, and then I'm going to come back to it. Because sometimes when you're really in the thick of it, you know, early on in a practice especially, but it could happen anytime. Sometimes it's just, it gets to be a bit overwhelming to be present with it. But then you're noticing, you know, like, what is it like to be present with it right now? And what is it like to pull away and put my mind on something else for a little while and then come back? You know, and we develop our stamina for being able to be with it. And then we have to be careful not to cling to that state of dukkha, because then it gets stagnant, it doesn't change, and we get depressed. So we not want to watch out for that. Make sure that we're observing it, not holding on to it in any way. Sure.
So when we were reading Vicky Bodhi's article about faith, like how we turn suffering into faith, he mentioned there were 3 different ways. The first way is with the negative emotion, you turn into resentment. The second way is to have a positive emotion that is you develop patience, courage, and endurance. The third one that he mentioned is that you see at its roots, which is a disease at its roots, and that will generate the motivation, want to get out of it, and then that's how we go into faith. So by reading that paragraph, I was reflecting a lot on myself. I just feel like ever since like I started practicing, I become a Buddhist when I was in my 20s. Before then, I was resenting about things happened to me, and then after I learned Buddhism and practiced Dhamma, then I cultivate endurance and patience. That was so beneficial to my life that I became so content with my life that I stopped practicing, honestly. I became so content that I think I just stopped there in terms of progressing. So my question is, of course, now after my husband passed, become a big blow, and then I come back to reflect myself. In the past 10 years, I have stopped progressing in terms of practice. So how do you suggest people? I never really, I have to admit, I never see myself that investigating on the third way by seeing the disease as its root. Even until now, I still don't see it.
Oh, yeah.
So I just how if people become too content in their life, actually that's what I see a lot of people around me. They're content in their life. How do they make a progress?
Yeah, this is a very good question. That feeling of being kind of content enough. This is good. I have a comfortable life, this is a very good question. The Buddha talks about not being content, even, like so let's just like really and truly, there are times to not be content with things. And it's not just bad things. It's also just, like you said, this kind of, this is pretty nice. This is pretty good. You can be just content here. Or maybe it's a little bit related to Nwit's question earlier about complacency. Where it's good. So you just kind of like enjoy it, and we're oblivious to the fact that it's going to change. And then when it changes, it's a big blow. And the Buddha talked about how, if a person makes some progress on the path, and he's like, don't just become, like content with that. You got to go to the next part. Don't stop there. Don't you develop generosity. You don't just stop there. There's a lot of joy that comes from being generous, and it's a beautiful thing, but you also need to develop virtue. And then when you develop your virtue, don't just stop there, even though there's a lot of benefits and it feels good and you feel, like there's a lot of safety in that, but you don't stop there. And you don't stop when you develop deep samadhi. So sometimes people stop, they get pretty, I usually feel like you're not going to get stuck with, the deep states of samadhi, but actually sometimes people are so pleased with and feel so much benefit from their deep samadhi. And yet when they come out of samadhi, they're not happy with their life, or they're not happy with the people around them. People are irritating or something like that. And then to recognize that, you don't want to stop there. There's more to do. And if we use the other practices, like reflecting on impermanence, dukkha, and not self, with everything that we experience, it sounds at first, if you're living a pretty happy, contented life that's going pretty well, seems to be pretty stable, maybe work is pretty stable and relationships are pretty stable, it feels like a downer to be thinking about, well, this isn't going to last. At some point, this is going to change any day. They could call everybody together at work and say, okay, we're shutting down, and maybe even then there's enough stability in your life that doesn't really bother you so much. There's another place to work, right? But the point being, there's no way we can ever avoid the anicca, dukkha, anatta of this samsara. And we're always vulnerable and subject to suffering, to misery, as long as we don't understand it for what it is. And we also don't realize that the contentment we have with the things of this world is so incomplete, compared to the joy, happiness, and contentment of knowing truth. So I think that the Buddha calls, aging, old age, sickness, and death heavenly messengers for a good reason. It wakes us up. It's like, oh, I mean, at some level, it's like my friend, her mother dying the other night at 99. Yeah, I said, it's really when our parents die, it's really kind of a shock to the system, even though they're going to die at some point. You can't have a 99-year-old mother and not be fully aware that she's going to die sometime, not in the not too distant future. But there's a kind of a gut feeling. There's some, our mother was always there our whole life. It's kind of hard to for the underlying system to get it, to imagine the world without her in it. And so that's why we keep reflecting on these things, to kind of bring ourselves to, this is the reality. This is the reality. And to do that in a way that's inspiring and not downpulling is really, important that we see how to do that. And I think it's through, it is through suffering and understanding what it feels like to lose what we have depended upon, and that we depended upon something that was always going to fail us. Always, no matter what else we would ever do, no matter if it's another person, there's no way they could control it. Our mother doesn't want to die and leave us, but it's going to happen anyway. And for us to take that in and recognize, once we really see that this is the natural unfolding, it's hard to imagine, but when that insight comes and you see that this is the nature of everything, it's freeing. There's this relief, because in the back of our mind, we keep trying to keep things going. Even mom at 99, my friend, she went through so much to take care of her mom, right? And of course you want to do that. There's a benefit, there's a satisfaction in it. And yet to really see clearly that everything's very nature is to fall apart. We don't have to work so hard to try to keep it in place. It's sliding. We can't keep it in place. When we really see that, oddly enough, it's freeing. There's joy that arises with insight. And once that happens, you can't go back to thinking of it another way. You can't go back to depending on these things or going through these supreme efforts, these intense efforts to try to keep things fresh, new, whole. Everything already has a crack in it. And when you see people who, when I, listen to students of Ajahn Chah, like Ajahn Amaro describing his first meeting of Ajahn Chah, and just seeing the joy and happiness in this person, the lightness. It's really profound, to get that there's this mysterious kind of infusion of joy and happiness when we see that everything is falling apart. It's like, how does that work? And yet that's how it is. So, I think in some sense, the complacency is you still keep, even though there's pleasant feeling there, even though there's pleasure, even though there's a sense of safety and security, we're still just kind of marching in place, biding our time. Somewhere in the back of our mind, we know it's not going to last. Somewhere in the back of our mind, there's a fear of losing what we have. And when we come to the point where, yeah, we don't want a fire to burn the hermitage down, but it could happen. Well, one practice is like, what would I miss? You know? Yeah, Deborah?
I was gonna say, my whole life's goal is to have your problem.
Oh.
I don't think I'll achieve that in this lifetime. But I also can guarantee that if my own experience of like, my body has been falling apart since I've been 16, those new things to work with will keep happening more and more, you know, as we get older. The dealing with the body stuff, I think, will always be something to work on. It's a challenge to contentment, I think. Pain, illness, those kinds of things. So,
Do you feel like since 16, what was the unfolding of your understanding of that? At 16, was there a sense of, wow, this isn't fair, or what was happening for you?
it felt very unfair because I didn't encounter Dhamma until like 14 years ago. So it felt very unfair, and the therapeutic way of handling that is to say, oh, how do you feel? Let's look at your feelings. But really what I needed to hear was, you know, oh, that's normal. That's natural. But now that there's social media, young people who experience their body, you know, early illness and such, they find each other on social media,
Right.
and they don't feel alone, and they know it's normal. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's something normal about it, even if they haven't gotten to the place where they see that in absolutely everything in this world as yet.
yeah. Definitely, as soon as I heard the Four Noble Truths, I'm like, oh, why did I hear that 30 years ago? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly no way we get through this life without dukkha. And therefore, without the opportunity to realize the Dhamma. If the support is there to see it in its true light. Yeah. So as we've been saying, it's really helpful to have Sangha, have friends on the path. And it can help us live with some level of contentment. We, help each other. And of course, the Buddha was very encouraging of that. And especially those who are, a bit further down the path than we are, wherever it is we think we are, listening to the Dhamma, when we can really recognize that authenticity and to pick that up and examine it for ourselves. This is really such a gift we have.
I have a dumb question.
Okay.
So let's say, like, Buddhism, I understand what he's teaching, I come across the obstacles, I apply Dhamma to it. And then all of a sudden, okay, I'm fine, I understand. It's impermanent. I move on. I thought move on. But then eventually I started to like give in and I accepted all the obstacles that come across. I understand those dukkha, they're impermanent. I accepted everything. Eventually I become so contented because I understand they're impermanent. But I don't feel like that is enough for me to get out of the cycle. But I'm already contented.
So I think this again, it's like, what part is not yet developed? You know, because the Buddha would say, yeah, don't stop there. You know, if you haven't realized certain things yet, to keep going, keep developing.
I'm lost in the part where I'm using facing dukkha to make me get deeper into Dhamma and to realize.
Yeah.
But as I started to accept everything is impermanent, I kind of, in the acceptance, I am contained.
Yeah, I see. I hear what you're saying.
Where do I go from here to deepen my studies?
So you have no desires, no aversion. But you want to retire
quickly. You go very quickly because that's all right.
But you want to retire, no?
I want to retire, but if I can't, then okay, that's fine. You know, it's like you eventually become having an attitude is, I don't get what I want, that's okay, I'm doing something else. And I feel like I'm losing the motivation to really get myself out because I know this is not it.
Yeah.
Well, you still got that third characteristic to play with, the not self one. You can investigate that more, like who was contented, you know, all this, who's the one doing it kind of questioning. Maybe you play with that. I don't know.
Yeah, a good idea.
Yeah, and
deepening,
deepening the mindfulness, you know, getting a sense of that, inquiring into the nature of conventional reality. You know, not just by the three characteristics, but, you know, yeah, not self is so crucial, third characteristic. But, you know, also in your meditation, seeing if you can develop more of a sense of that, the knowing, seeing the Dhamma.
Okay.
Maybe you need something more concrete.
And if you were truly content, you wouldn't be discontent that you're content.
Exactly. I do
You have the feeling that you should be moving on. So that's not a true contentment.
I know, but they are kind of like 1 to 10, I'm at 9. That's not very good.
Life is just too easy. Yeah.
We're just simple people.
Yeah, I mean, I think digging into the Buddhist teachings and listening to his advice, you know, about what to develop further into, you know, the real emptiness of self. It's a good place to look. Like was said, it's an interesting problem to have.
It feels like it's an obstacle to practice.
Yeah,
You're in a condition that is too comfortable.
Yeah, you're in kind of a Deva realm. You know, it's just not enough dukkha, I guess. Yeah, maybe you need to donate a kidney.
Now you got me thinking.
Regina?
I was just reminded of samvega, spiritual urgency. And I feel like I have a lot of it. And I don't know how to describe it any better, but the wish to really understand this at a deep level and to keep practicing, something like that. And I think that spiritual urgency is an engine in itself. And it helps me to not become complacent. And with another question that I absolutely loved, I was reminded of that I've heard this a while ago. The good is the enemy of the best. And I just kind of keep
The
that
best
close.
is the enemy of the good.
Oh, it goes both ways. Some people say one thing and some people say the other thing, you know. I mean, which is again the middle way, but and so I was, and then I while you were talking about the suttas and that if I understood it right, because I haven't read the suttas that quickly, that the Buddha talks that reflection would really help to not become like the seamstress. I was thinking that, let's say I'm angry or jealous or something like that, that my angry and jealous mind, when that starts reflecting, it doesn't get nowhere. It doesn't give me anywhere. I have to sort of step back and remember a stillness or a silence, something like that, you know, some places that I experience in meditation or sometimes just in daily life when I pause and then take that, I don't know how to describe it, I try. Take that kind of silence with my reflection and then reflect back on whatever my hindrance is. And use that kind of different perspective on whatever I would like to get further away from. And it always has a kind of listening quality, I think, if I describe that right. And that gets us close to what James and somebody else, they had these questions that they were working with. You know, when I ask questions, I also listen more, and I give more room for the silence to either, let me see, the silence to either have me wait for an answer or to make me receptive for an answer.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's how I would reflect if I use that verb or that noun or whatever, the verb, because when I start reflecting with my daily mind, that can get all over the place or something. That's kind of not the
That's not where the wisdom is. It's not in the thinking. We can't come to it through thinking.
Yeah, thank you.
It's like what you're saying. It's very wonderful to think of it as a kind of listening, learning how to listen for the answer. It's like we pose the question, we have it in our mind, we go into stillness, we listen for the answer. It's beautifully described. Yes. Nice. Yeah. And I think the spiritual urgency, it is so important. That's Samvega. And, you know, one way to do, so when we don't feel that spiritual energy and we're in the world, we're not really looking at the nature of reality. We're not really looking at or taking in this kind of going through this cycle again and again and again. And all of the loss that we experience when we do that, you know, then when we see that, like one time I was staying at a Bayagiri Buddhist monastery, and I was staying in the house where the lady of the house had died. And there was actually a photograph of her when she was close to her death. and her, just the way her body looked, all emaciated. And then one night while I was there, I had a dream and I saw myself, almost like time-lapse photography, my body, my face deteriorating, becoming very emaciated, just seeing the bones under the thin skin. And I really had this strong sense of urgency arise to awaken. And because I was practicing a lot with being present with the feeling, I was present in my dream with the feeling of this, seeing myself deteriorate in this way. And it was a great influx of this sense of urgency, of samvega, urgency to awaken. So it's by reflection on these things that inevitably will happen, and to really get an understanding, or look at these suttas that say there's no discoverable beginning. What's more, the water in the oceans, or your blood that's been shed, or the tears you've shed, and to really reflect on that kind of thing. And like you said, Regina, it's not just about thinking about it. We want to see if we can give the thinking mind a holiday and really, go into meditation, find some calm and stillness, and let a question like that come up, and then see what the answer is. Whether it's a question about, some perception we have of self, or it's a question about, the nature of impermanence, or, what is the dukkha that I am bound for? If you're born, you're going to die. What's that going to be like? What happens after you die? You can ask. One time I was meditating and I had this experience of what it would be like when I die. That there would be this, I know this may sound kind of cliche-ish, but in the moment, in my experience of it, it wasn't like anything I really had thought of before. But there was a sense of seeing kind of the passage of my life. There was like a sense of going through this phase of, I don't know, maybe it's something like the Bardo. It's like going through this where I could review my life in a sense. I could also see what was needed to go forward. Anyhow, I can't really describe it apparently, but that kind of thing can really help us have the energy to want to understand the truth, and much more motivation.
Thank you. Very helpful. Especially when you tell me to donate my kidney, I suddenly realize that I do have dukkha. I do have attachment to my body. I gotta work on
I didn't quite hear what she said.
Oh, she said when I told her that she should donate her kidney, then she realized she does have dukkha. She has attachment to her body. Yeah. Just a thought. Okay. Well, we've pretty much come to the end of the time. I think we should chant something here at the end. What do you think, Ayya?
I think we should.
32 parts.
Oh.
No?
Minus the kidney. No.
31 parts.
Kidney,
30 parts. That's right. I don't think we're really doing that.
No. Okay.
So we did.
Or is it gonna be on this?
We could put it on the screen.
Not let everyone do. Oh, I did 31, huh? 5 subjects for frequent recollection.
We could do that.
Yeah, let's share that one. Yeah.
Let's see.
You want me to do?
What page are we on? Right.
Okay.
I didn't share it yet.
Oh, okay.
I found it, but I didn't share it. So we want to make sure you all can see.
Okay. Oh, let's make it bigger, huh? I do. Okay, let me move it. Namayang abina pachawekana patang banamase jaradamo mi jarang anatita. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. Bayadi damo mi bayadi anatita. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. Marana damo mi marana nanatita. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. Sabehi me piyehi mana pehi nana bhavo vina bhavo. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Kama sakami kama dayada kama yoni kama bandhu kama patisarana yang kamang karisami kalyanang wapapakam watasadayada bhavisami. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Ewang amehi abinhang pachawe kitabang. Thus we should frequently recollect.
Shall we do the closing homage?
Sure, why not?
I don't know if anybody needs to see it.
Well, let's do it anyway, just for fun.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to do?
Uh-huh.
Pali.
Okay. The noble, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teachings so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
Okay. Okay, everybody.
It's nice to practice with you today.
Thank you.